Quick question. Is this drill ecologically dynamic?
Yes.
Why?
Random variables. Realistic threats.
It's realistic. Realistic means what? Representative design. Representative task design. Nice. What else? It's alive.
Resisting opponent.
Real resistance. Is there contextualized decision making involved? Are we coupling our decision making, our contextualized decision making, with our motor skills? Are those three things being encoded together at the same time? Are our perceptions dictating our actions, and our actions dictating our perception? Yes. Here we go. Let's do this.
Good morning, everybody. Coach Kurt here with Elves Collie Fight Team. I got Guro Brian who's running a little technical issue, but we're here with the Fight House Talks podcast. Today we have an excellent guest. We have Todd Fossey from Integrative Defensive Strategies. We're going to be talking about. We're going to actually get away from stabby kill slash and the world of knives and sticks and get out of the lane of FMA for a little while, which will be kind of refreshing because. Fight House talks about a wide variety of things outside the scope of that, because we have candid conversations about life, violence, and martial arts, and in dealing with the modern landscape of the combat spaces out there. Firearms is it's not the new, but it is a big part of our tool set when it comes to our martial prowess, which is also really interesting for us because Guro Brian and I are both veterans, so we get to cut up on this about talking about firearms. So without further ado, Guro Brian, do you have anything before I bring him up?
Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Still a shit little echo, huh? Well,
yeah, it's not so bad.
We have our first comment. Guro Tom has already busted my balls already. We've already started the episode 4 minutes in.
Yeah, it's all
Okay,
good.
Guro Tom. I'm just kidding around. Yeah, guys, this is something a little different. Tired of, if everybody's tired of seeing the martial arts aspect, we're gonna start going to some uncharted territory with the gun industry and the gun folks. Me and Coach Kurt are both actively. I wouldn't say we're actively instructors, but we're experienced with firearms. I carry a firearm with me at all times with concealed weapon permit. I'm sure Coach Kurt does.
Constitutional carry, my friend. Constitutional carry.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm not one of those guys that are walking around with a 6-shooter wide open my hip because we have open carry here in New Mexico, but I do prefer to carry appendix style concealed carry with the Glock 43X or P365 6-hoyer. Because my two guns I carry for concealed, 9mm on both. But this should be good. I hope we had technical issues worked out. People that are watching, hoping you'll hear me reverbing and echoing. If you do, let me know, and we'll try to figure it out. But enough of me rambling. Let's get man of the hour, Mr. Todd Fossey, Integrated Defense Strategies, the man, the myth, the legend in the firearms game. So we're going to pick his brain. How's it going, sir?
Hey, man. You guys, thank you so much for having me on. It's really cool to be on the show with you. It's interesting how frequently I end up on podcasts that are either directly FMA podcasts or indirectly FMA podcasts. And I've never done FMA for 1 second in my life. But there's something happening within the FMA world, I think, that is itching to broaden their view on things. I think that from my view, from the outside in, seems like there are, vanguards from within that community that are looking to expand the paradigm there. So any little bit that I can add to that too, I'm happy to, even though if I don't know that I am.
Well, to be fair, my friend, and I'm very grateful that you have been accepted within our community, because something I'm constantly asking of the FMA community is it really FMA? And more importantly, what makes it FMA? Is it because I'm Filipino by birth and I got a stick knife and a sword and I'm using cultural terms? But the fact is, admittedly, within the FMA community, we're really good about borrowing, adapting, and making it our own. So firearms is the next landscape to address. So yeah,
Right
why
on.
not?
Amen. I'm all about it. I am anti-dogma.
Yeah.
There's definitely a parallel though to with the firearms as with the knife with regards to drawing under
Mhm.
pressure and pulling it out of of your either holster with a gun or your sheath with a knife. There's definitely parallels there. I think that's why FMA is kind of gravitating towards the firearm industry kind of tactics because under pressure, like I said, with a knife or a gun, similarities not exactly the same, obviously with a firearm, but two different animals, but just some similarities. So I want to go ahead and start off with. I'm sure people here know your history and everything already with integrative strategies and all that stuff. But if you want to just kind of give a quick brief rundown just to people who may not know that are watching that exactly what you do and what kind of systems you draw from stuff.
Yeah. Well, my background is unique. It's interesting. My influences are unique. I think that might be one of the reasons why our approach is also unique. Wow, where to begin with this? I was a bouncer for a long time, and I ended up being a bouncer and head of security in Hollywood at a lot of high-profile places, and literally right on the Sunset Strip. So I saw and experienced a lot of bad stuff. And I did that through my 20s and actually into my early 30s too, while I was coming up actually through the entertainment industry. And that's where I got exposed to, well, obviously a lot of extreme violence on a regular basis. We were going hands-on 3 to 5 times a night. I'm lucky to be alive, to be honest with you. My background and my education before that in college and actually starting at the age of 10 was behavioral sciences. And I started studying human performance at the age of 10. So I'm 53 years old now. So I've been studying human performance and skill acquisition now for 43 years. So I got into Krav Maga actually when I was a bouncer back in the early 90s all the way up through the late 90s. I got involved with Krav Maga, and that's when I got involved with firearms training. But my early firearms exposure actually came through the entertainment industry with consultants on films. Consultants on action films knew that I went to the range. These were friends of mine, and they're like, "Don't go to the range." I'm like, "Well, I live in LA. Where am I going to go?"
Yeah.
Bring me out to this compound with them, and they weren't really my instructors, but they would say, "Listen, just imitate what we do." And it's really started to open my mind up a lot to the tactical approaches versus the generic marksmanship approach. And then I've taken it several steps farther, where I integrate several things. I integrate combatives in with it. Really, the approach that I take is really modern MMA. I broke off from traditional Krav Maga. I studied with the Israelis for many years. I have a black belt in traditional Krav Maga, but my mentor now is Greg Nelson, and I train and learn under Greg Nelson for several hours every single week. In fact, I was just with him for several hours yesterday, and messaging with him this morning. We communicate with each other a lot, and then I'm honored to say also that I get to coach him every Friday. The Minnesota Martial Arts Academy, we have something we call Firearms Fridays, where we just do research and development. So I ended up founding Integrative Defense Strategies after a long practice, a private practice where I was a coach in human performance and a psychotherapist for 15 years. I also lectured at medical schools for over 15 years also on a topic called psychoneuroimmunology.
Wow.
I have a deep background in neuropsychology. So what I really do is I combine neuropsychology, cognitive psychology, and what's called ecological psychology in the approach. And as I went through, became an instructor in firearms training, I got called by my higher power. I'm a devout Christian, to leave my practice to do this full time to help make the world a safer place. And I started to realize just how grossly deficient and outdated the firearms training and self-defense training industries were. So what I did was I locked myself in my office for 2 weeks. And the only time I came out was to sleep or go to the bathroom. And I said, I'm going to just tune everything out. I'm going to apply all the science that I know. And I'm going to apply a methodology that science says how it should look. That is uninfluenced to the best of my ability by tradition and intuition. And I'm going to let the data and the science lead the way. And by the time I came up with this system and I looked at it, I said to myself, wow, this is so dramatically different. Who's going to want this? Will anybody even be able to identify it? So I started to post some stuff online little by little, and I just had a real flooding of support for people like, wow, this is what we've always been looking for. Like, how do we do this? And then eventually I ended up starting my own affiliate program. And now we certify instructors across the world. We're on 4 continents, and we have 50 affiliates worldwide. We also have something locally here we call IDS LabWorks. And all we do with all of our local students is just research and development. They're all lab rats. So all we're doing every day is research and development on curriculum on a full spectrum of topics. So just so you guys know, for the listeners, how it works, like, we're integrating the firearms with combatives, with decision-making, with the science of the use of force, legalities, the science of skill acquisition, psychology, and tactics. And we're taking all of those things and we're integrating them all together where they're indivisible and inseparable from one another, right? Mm-hmm. So we can't influence one thing without influence all of them. It's a holistic approach known as ecological dynamics. And if you guys want to, we can get into that later. But that's just a little bit about who I am and what my background is.
Yeah, that's awesome. So thank you for that, because the fact is, a big problem we run into in the martial arts community, as we all know, is rhetoric, dogma, and stagnation. And stagnation leads to death and obliteration and obscurity, because if we don't throw those little rocks in the pond, there isn't any change. So people are hungry for change.
You nailed it. You nailed it. Listen, I want to say to everybody listening that everything that I say, I'm just simply putting forward for your consideration. But I'm going to speak freely because I care. And I feel as though if I edit myself and I censor myself, I'm not going to say things that might save somebody's life or forward the industry in some way. So I'm asking everyone's permission just to hear me out, the things that I had to say, and file it away. And then maybe someday it might be something that you want to, that you might want to participate in some capacity. But I have something that I'd like to read along those same lines, Kurt, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, this is about you, not us. We're on here all the time. So
well, this is your show, so I want to be respectful of that. There's a lot of my background is psychology, right? And in psychology, there's a collection of cognitive biases. And one of them is called the system justification bias. That's also called the status quo bias. And I want to read the definition of that because I think it formally lends to what you guys are talking about. So the definition of the system justification bias is the tendency to defend or bolster the status quo. Existing social, economic, and political arrangements tend to be preferred and alternatives disparaged, sometimes even at the expense of individual and collective self-interest. So even if somebody knows and sees something, oh, you know what, that's probably a lot better than what I'm doing, they won't do it because of the politics that's involved or how it might reflect on them negatively, meaning, well, if I admit that what I've been doing is outdated, grossly outdated and deficient, and I've been presenting myself as if I have all of the answers, that therefore what I've done is I've painted myself into a corner, and I can never admit that these other ideas aren't going to be more effective than what I'm doing, because my followers in my cult will start to ask questions about what else don't I know? What else have I been semantically inaccurate about? What else have I been scientifically illiterate about? right? What else have I been morally subjective about? What things are my opinions have I sold as absolute facts and truths? You see? And so their whole paradigm will fall apart just by admitting that another idea might be more effective or more up to date than what they've been practicing.
I mean, essentially what you're talking about is the crab pot mentality. How dare you succeed? How dare you address something that we're all like comfortable with, but we're going to pull you down because you are speaking out, you're challenging the narrative. And hats off to you. I mean, the fact is, leadership is people who are willing to stand forward, present themselves, faults and vulnerabilities and everything, but they're willing to stand in by their example, whether or not it works or not. But the fact that they're leading the charge, that's leadership. So well done.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that you recognize that. There are many times where I feel like I'm a lone voice in the wilderness, you know. But I tell you, I spend a lot of time every week talking with people around the world who are interested in what we do, and they want to have conversations about coming on board with us as an affiliate, or they just want to learn what some of my ideas are. And I can tell you that, well, first of all, let me say this. There are people out there who see it. But it's also important for us to understand that 80% of the world forms their opinion. This is a scientific fact. 80% of the world forms their opinion based on consensus.
Mm-hmm.
Only 20% of the world is even capable of thinking critically. And an even smaller percentage of those 20% that are capable of thinking critically are willing to think critically or go against the status quo.
It's because everybody, it's like I said, everybody sees shit on social media now, and it's they go by views and likes. You know, some fucking guy puts something on there and he has 1 million likes, 1 million views.
Yeah.
Of course, they're gonna follow that guy. And well, this guy must be doing it right because he has all these views and all these likes and social media with a presence. But then you get somebody who makes an intelligible sense, makes good sense, and actually has a good technique. And just because he's not popular or not liked because you say he's challenging the status quo, he's kind of looked like, well, you know, that guy only has a couple views. I'm not going to follow him. You know what I mean? It's just like when you go to the store and buy shit, right? Like if you have there's like laundry detergent, right? So if you look at some laundry detergent or some shit, and it's like $2.77, right? And it has the same ingredients as that one. It's $10.77. But you're like, well, this shit must suck because it's only $2.77. This one's $10. And everybody's buying this one because it's tied over there. So I'm going to buy it. That's the same shit people do in, like you said, the firearms and martial arts industry. They think that you have less value because your social media presence or your likes and views aren't as much as the other guy. But not even looking at the material and presenting it, you know what I mean? And analyzing it, like you said, looking at it, see what value is from it. It's automatically the mentality of, well, that's not good because nobody follows that guy. Am I right? I mean,
in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And you know, just to jump on what you were saying, Brian. Man, I can just really get myself in trouble here. But it's in psychology. It's known as a cognitive illusion.
Mm-hmm.
Right, where people's minds are captured based on how things are framed. So just to give it there's many documented examples of this, but one of my favorites, I don't know if you guys have ever heard about this one, but in a very fancy mall in Beverly Hills, it's in the Beverly Center, a place that I'm familiar with. They put up a storefront. Have you guys seen this? Mm-hmm. With a very fancy, elegant sign on the outside of it with an Italian name for Italian shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they invited all of these influencers within the fashion and shoe industry to show up, and they had everything just really well presented and super well lit with really great presentation and fancy names, and all this psychological influencing techniques were happening in place. And they interviewed all of these influencers, asked them what they thought about the shoes, and they were all excited about it. And the shoes were priced at $2,500, right? And they're like, oh, I would pay $2,500 for these in a second. I can't wait to wear these shoes and to put them on my clients. And they found out later that the shoes were from Payless.
Yeah.
They were $25 shoes sold for $2,500. They created a cognitive illusion, and that's exactly what happens in our industries.
Exactly.
Now, I'm not here to say, I can give some other examples too that I'd like to, because I think this is what's at the core of the issues here. I'm not here to say that those Payless shoes have no value. They have some value, right? But they don't nearly have the value in which they have been presented or sold. You see, this goes on and on and on. I mean, would you want to wear those Payless shoes if you were LeBron James in the NBA World Championship? Of course you wouldn't. They wouldn't be able to perform in the way in which they were sold. You see, and the problem in our industry is an industry of life and death. That's my issue. I try to tell the industry, look, we're not selling fucking barbecue sauce here. If you want to sensationalize your barbecue sauce with a bunch of sizzle, go ahead. But at the end of the day, you can cost somebody their fucking life, motherfucker. This is where I get really heated. This is where I get heated. This is where I have a problem with it. You know, I'd like to give another example of how this works. There's a great book out for people who are interested in this. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow, where famous cognitive psychologists broke a bunch of this stuff down. And one of the things in the book, these psychologists were hired to come into a major investment firm. And they were hired to do a statistical analysis of the performance of their most highly paid stock pickers, people who built multi-billion-dollar financial portfolios, who are paid tens of millions of dollars to hundreds of million dollars a year based on their expertise in the financial industry, right? And something I have a lot of passion about is macroeconomics and finance. Anyway, they did a statistical analysis of these highly paid stock pickers, and they had dinner with the CEO and the CFO of this big name firm, and they handed them their results. And here's what they found. This is their language, not mine, so don't be mad at me. You can look this up in the book. This is a quote. They said, a blindfolded monkey could have picked the stocks with the same level of outcome as these highly paid experts in finance. So guess what the CFO and the CEO did with that information and all the data, breaking it down and proving it? Guess what they did?
They picked some stocks.
They buried it. Yeah. They did nothing because they said, well, we can't sell that. We sell confidence. It's a confidence game. It's a con game.
Because you're getting questioned.
People have to have confidence in this cognitive illusion of expertise that we've created. Now, to take it a step farther, there's something called the halo effect, where people who are put up on a pedestal, people who view them up on a pedestal, think that everything that they say and do is gospel, that they can do no wrong. And what's interesting about that is the research shows that the people have the most fame within a specific disciplines. Their information is the least reliable of anybody else's, because they've drank their own Kool-Aid. They believe their own bullshit, and their identity and their income is dependent on the information that they put out. So they're less interested in putting out information that is intellectually honest and more interested in what's going to feed their own ego, what's going to give them the most narcissistic supply, and what's going to give them the most money. You see?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the groundwork for the problems that we're seeing in the industries, right?
Right. Yes. Well, there's a comment in here from Peter Kodziel. He's a Canadian FMA practitioner and friend of mine, but it's the truth here. A cheap blade and an expensive blade can still cut you.
That's what I said about the detergent. The same shit, the same ingredients,
the same
thing.
You know, I put out a meme recently talking about this. Talking about it's the artist, it's not the brush, right? And I try to let people know, especially in my industry, my God, the firearms training industry, the emphasis is all wrong. It's all on gear, right?
Yeah,
it's all on gadgets. Everyone puts all their time and money into gadgets and gear, and they build their training around their branded gadgets and gear, even if it's crap or if it endangers somebody's life or if it's not even contextually specific, right? And so most people don't know this, but Picasso painted 7 masterpieces with household paint and brushes. 7, not just paintings, masterpieces with household paint and brushes. Listen, I love great gear as much as the next guy, right? But I don't want to put my time and money and emphasis in gear when I can put my time and money and emphasis on training, knowledge, and education.
Yep.
And in the firearms
I want
industry,
to be,
it's
I
always
want to be Picasso, not the brush, right?
yeah. In
Go
the
ahead.
firearms industry too, it's always the gun. Like it, it's like, well, this new 9mm, there's this much capacity for the magazine. The hammer slides back. The slide, the safety switch on there is better. The trigger, the trigger reflex, trigger guard is bigger, so your finger go on there, you pop more rounds. It's always emphasis on the weapon rather than the person. I mean, if you get a gun and nobody knows how to use it, it's basically worthless, right? I mean, like if you don't know how to properly use it right without hurting yourself, it's useless.
If you can't
Well, how about
acquire
this?
that front sight post, I mean, it's no good. If your fundamentals are, yeah.
Well,
I need night sights.
Let me talk about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's do that.
And if you guys can bear with me here a little bit, because this might challenge some of your paradigm about that too.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. When you come up from the military, you come up with a standardized approach, because
Mhm.
everything has to be an SOP. Everything has to be standardized, and you have thousands of people that you're moving through a standardized training program, right? Where violence is not standardizable.
That is correct.
Mhm.
The variables are not repeatable.
That is correct.
Therefore, it's a qualitative experience, and therefore the training should be performance-based versus outcome-based. So that's
That is
one.
correct.
And that's just, wow, people can't even deal with it, dude. Like, what the fuck? They can't even deal with it. It's a scientific fucking fact. Okay. And I could go on for hours on that. Okay.
Yeah.
So at IDS, we draw a very clear distinction between generic marksmanship and being a fighter with a gun.
Mhm.
To us, generic marksmanship is the equivalent of figure skating, and being a
Mhm.
fighter with a gun is the equivalent of hockey. You're both on skates, you're both on ice, you're both in the same ring, you're both in the same arena, but the context is dramatically different. The figure skater does not skate like the hockey player skates. Their mechanics are dramatically different because they're one of the environments is ecological, right?
Mhm.
It's randomized and it's violent, where the other one is pre-choreographed, right? Based on beauty and precision. Not the same. So we need to be careful. Another major problem with the industry is they want to conflate different ideas. They want to take two concepts and they want to combine them into one, when really the overlap between the two is in the Venn diagram is extremely small, but it's
Mhm.
convenient for them to be able to call one thing another. Now, just to give you one example, and I could give you hundreds, maybe thousands. You're talking about front sight post, okay?
Yep.
Just to give you one small example, right? A specific one, maybe too specific actually, but under stress, like my background's neuropsychology, right? Your brain will downshift into a primitive mode when you are ambushed in a violent situation, right? So what will happen is you will experience something called selective attention, which means that your eyes will focus only on, and your eyes are part of your brain, will focus only on the things that it deems to be the most important.
Mhm.
Okay, so that means that what will happen, and there's a lot of research around this with brain scan technology or eye scan technology, brain scan technology, that says that your eyes will focus on the threat, that you won't even see your sights. In addition to that, I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. Sights have a place. Don't get me wrong. They really do. Don't get me wrong. So we can combine the two a little bit. What's called a flash sight picture, right? But the average distance of a defensive shooting is 9 feet.
Mhm.
76% of defensive shootings take place at a distance of 6 feet. So how accurate do you really need to be?
Not that accurate, because I mean, close engagement zone. I mean, it's the essential point the barrel at the enemy. I mean, to use a very
Well, there's a lot of things I see. People are like, "We got to get center mass. I'm getting a headshot right." And I've always, I've been to some courses. I'm not gonna name any names locally here in El Paso. They emphasize that you got to get center mass right away when you get. I was like, what if I don't have? What if different variables? What if it's fucking raining in my face? What if like someone's around my area? Like
stop the threat as fast as you can. So your target will be determined based on one, what's your level of training, right?
Mhm.
And what's the nature of the threat, right? And whatever the circumstances are, what's the way that you can stop that threat the fastest? And I'm not going to go into too much detail on that. But so listen, when I talked about the percentage of people who operate based on what the consensus is, I'm also talking to instructors, and probably especially instructors. right? They don't think critically. So I'm going to say this, like we get into motor learning now, okay, which is my background, motor learning and skill acquisition. I'm just going to ask a question for everyone's consideration that they might not like, okay? Because I ask questions that make people mad. I don't understand that, but that's just the way it goes. I would ask, what percentage of professional instructors have actually spent a meaningful amount of time studying the science of skill acquisition? I'm not talking about listening to a lecture here and there. I'm not talking about reading an article or maybe even reading a whole book. Whoa. I'm not talking about maybe you heard a portion of a conference. I'm talking about what percentage of instructors have actually spent a meaningful amount of time studying the latest findings in the disciplines of skill acquisition and motor learning.
I'd say less than 5%.
Yeah.
That's being generous.
Oh, wow.
So 1%.
guarantee 1 in 1,000.
Yeah.
Oh,
1 in 1,000.
damn.
They're operating based on dogma, tradition, and intuition, where when you really actually start to study the science of skill acquisition and motor learning, you find out very quickly that an awful lot of it is not intuitive. It is counterintuitive, especially when we're talking about violence.
Does that also include pressure testing?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, let's talk about ecological dynamics a little bit. This might help. One of the things that we spend a lot of time on in our instructor certification program is training and educating our instructors on the latest research in motor learning. Look, guys, the firearms training world at best, before I get into ecological dynamics, I want to say this. At best, listen, I know this stuff. I've been studying it for 43 years, okay? The most up-to-date outside of what we do at IDS, and I know how you guys, that might sound, but I don't care, is the best I've ever heard is 10 to 15 years out of date. On average, it's 40 to 60 years out of date.
Well, I mean,
now, my wife works in surgery. My wife works in surgery. Okay, my wife trains surgical teams, and she will tell you that in surgery, if you aren't trained in the latest methodology and trained by the latest methodology, by anywhere from 18 to 24 months, that surgeon can be sued for malpractice. And you know what else she says? What you guys do is far more difficult than what we do in surgery. Because the OR is all about controlling the variables. Where you're dealing with ambushes, where the variables are unpredictable and unrepeatable, where the stakes are just as high for us as they are for you. But we're learning in a way that is at best 10 to 15 years out of date, and at worst 50 to 60 years out of date. That is morally wrong.
It's the issue about the battle tested in the jungle narrative, to speak with the FMA community, or with the veteran community, about utilizing Vietnam era tactics in a global war on terror. Even better yet, global war on terror tactics comparatively to what we're doing with a near peer adversary, switching back to a near peer adversary.
So what does the context and the overwhelming most popular approach in the firearms training world is paramilitary training?
Yep.
That has nothing to do with what I'll break it down. I know what I'm a geek when it comes to what the statistics are for violent crime statistics. I obsess about it. My wife calls it data porn.
Yeah,
I obsess about it.
But
The context isn't. There's no overlap. There's this much overlap in a huge Venn diagram. Like,
yeah,
the paramilitary approach. Like, I look at these super popular, super famous instructors online and what they're teaching, and I ask, like, what are you preparing people for? Now, granted, don't get me wrong. I have paramilitary training, and I've taught SWAT teams and a lot. Like, I'm versed in small unit tactics, and I think that every American should be versed in small unit tactics, and they should have a carbine, and they should have full battle rattle. They should. Every American should have that training. However, they should know that the chances of them needing it is almost zero. In fact, let's take it a step farther. In several lifetimes, let's take it a step farther. Even gun versus gun in self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
Gun versus gun in self-defense. If you remove the violent crime statistics of gang warfare and drug crime warfare, the chances of you getting into a gun-on-gun encounter is almost zero.
I will add something to that. Okay. You're right about that.
It doesn't mean you shouldn't be trained in it.
Yeah.
We train that. Now listen, people they'll split, right?
Yeah.
They'll say, well, IDS doesn't believe in marksmanship and they don't do gun-on-gun stuff. The fuck we don't. We do it every single day. Every goddamn day, 6 or 7 days a week. But we have it proportionate to what the statistics says that how we should be spending our time and energy. They saw the trailer at the beginning.
Go
ahead.
There's been quite a few incidents here lately of gun on gun that were non drug and gang related. Mostly people with big ego, big bravado. You pull a gun on me, I'm gonna pull a gun on you and shoot you, or family members, family involved in domestic violence cases. Like a guy shooting his son, shooting his father. And I'm just talking about here. I'm not saying that nationwide that's happening everywhere, but I know here's.
Hey Brian, do you know how many violent crimes? Look, I know I might sound contrary, but on average in the United States, do you know how many violent crimes occur every year where someone is justified to use a firearm in self-defense?
No.
7 million.
Wow.
So you can give isolated cases, and that's cool. I'm not here to say that they don't happen and that you shouldn't be prepared for it. You should be better prepared than anybody.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying the chances of that happening are extremely small. Let me break it down for you before I get into this ecological dynamic stuff. Okay. The most common aggravated assault is going to be an ambush with a blunt force weapon. Most commonly, it's a hammer. Then a baseball bat or something like that. After that, and these are ambushes where these weapons and intent are concealed until the last possible moment. If you have the opportunity to watch this unfold while they give you a sexy one-liner, that's a luxury. After that, it's edge weapons. Okay. And then again, 81% of those, the edge weapon is concealed until the last possible moment, and the attacker will lead with the controlling hand. They'll lead with the controlling hand, and they'll start to stab the side and the neck rapidly at 5 to 7 bursts every 5 seconds. Okay. After that, it's what's called personal weapons, where people are using hands, feet, and legs, kicks, elbows, and improvised weapons to the level of excessive force. Then after that, it's firearms, which is way down the list. Okay, so how do we really want to be spending our time? Let's take it a step farther than that. 80% of all assaults are simple assaults and simple battery, where you're reasonably in immediate fear of simply just getting banged and bruised and scraped. Now you're carrying a firearm and you don't possess any of the intermediate skills to deal with that. And they see or feel that you have a firearm on or a blade on, and you don't know how to operate in extreme close quarters. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to fixate on it and they're going to want it. One, so that you won't use it on them.
Mm-hmm.
Two, so that they can use it on you.
Mm-hmm. Return to sender.
The whole tool fixation issue. Like we rely on the tool to be the magic pill, the lightsaber, the one item. But if you are the weapon system, not the tool, then it's innocuous. Because I get in trouble all the time, as you can see the rubber chicken. I train knives, I train firearms, but I also train rubber chicken. Because here's the fact. The gross motor movement, the intent, the creative, violent, imaginary intent does not matter if the tool doesn't matter in that situation. So I can train all the gross motor, combat applicable stuff with a rubber chicken or a spork or whatever, because it's the mentality, the mindset, and the body mechanics that matter.
And the principles of fighting. The principles of fighting are the principles of fighting.
That is correct.
Whether it's macro warfare,
Mhm.
right, large scale warfare, or whether it's micro in extreme close quarters. The principles of the fight are the principles of fight, and that's why we prefer to be principle based. I don't want to give my students a collection of keys. I want to teach them to be a key maker, right? That's what ecological dynamics is all about. It's about problem solving in the moment. We want to give your students the tools and the principles that they need to solve whatever problem is put before them. That's the point. And so this is why what we prefer to do is actually one of the things that we do when we teach is we put the problem first. We don't prescribe a solution first. We put the problem first and we let them struggle to solve the problem. We want to teach them to solve that mathematical equation. And then we guide them through the process of learning the principles of learning how to solve that problem by teaching them if we use math as an analogy, by teaching them how to do mathematics. Mm-hmm. So here's how the martial arts, especially the firearms training world works. First of all, it's too infrequent. People go for 2 days a year. Fuck you. It's not even scientifically possible to create a level of competence that way. It's not possible. It's not biologically possible. So fuck off with your bullshit. You're setting people up for catastrophic outcomes, right? You're fanning the flames of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Don't even get me started. It's a serious fucking problem. But here's what they do. They'll teach people that this shape is the shape of a letter 2. They don't tell them what it means. It's just this shape means 2. This shape means plus. This shape means 2. This shape means equal. They don't even learn how to interpret what it means. And this shape means 4. Okay, repeat this. Repeat 2 plus 2 over and over and over again. Now repeat equals 4 over and over again. Okay, let's put it together. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Repeat it over and over and over and over and over and over. And guess what? You know how to do math, right? Where violence is calculus, motherfucker. And not only is it calculus, but all of the variables are changing before your eyes, and you're going to see variables in front of you you've never even seen before, right? And so, do you think that we're setting people up for catastrophic outcomes? My God.
Yeah.
It sells courses because it sells the illusion of competence.
And it's the issue about, like, they fixate on the tool and technique, and we're not actually teaching critical thinking and creative thinking, because those are the things that really matter, because chaos is combat. I mean, the universe and the enemy has the most amount of say in a combat situation, in a violent situation, because you can get so fixated on the dogma, the rhetoric, the math, and expect these outcomes. But the fact is, that's on your presentation, your preparedness. And again, the enemy in the universe has a lot to say in this, and more so. So, that's a big issue.
The industry is selling pre-choreographed fight sequences.
It goes to a lot of movie stuff.
That's what the instructors are selling too. Listen, not all of them, but I can tell you right now in your industry, in FMA, and some of them actually get off into weapons-based combatives and other shit, right? Mm-hmm. I've never seen some of these motherfuckers even do a live go. What are you talking about? All I see is you doing highly produced fucking movie trailers and choreographed fucking, you're a great presenter, motherfucker, but you're not a coach. And I've never even seen you do a live go. I've never seen a hair out of place. I've never seen you fail one time. Fuck you and all of your bullshit. You know what I mean? Come touch hands with us for 1 second. I can look around on an average Tuesday night and find 5 people who have more skill in their little finger that you've never heard about, who can teach their ass off better than you ever been able to. But you've got this huge following. You're making all this money because you've created this fucking, this public persona that leads people believe that's what you can do. You think Ponch is a fucking real cop on fucking chips? Fuck off.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's a lot of fucking bullshit out there, and it's just you're right. It's like John Wick style gung fu shit that's being ever since those movies fucking came out. People are kidding me at work. Hey man, you think that John Wick shit? Like, can you teach me like the gun like that and the hand-to-hand show? I was like, dude, that's like fucking movies. You know that, right? That's not reality. But the fucking public eats it up, and they think that's what it is when they go to the fucking range.
And the industry
sells. Women, when they go to the range,
the industry sells.
So this is the reason why, like with my own video content, it's it's not very well edited. For one, because I want the transparency of watching me suffer and my training partners suffer and see the mistakes. Because the fact of the matter is, for one, I don't want to spend the time cutting up a really well produced highlight reel, but the real value is in the transparency and showing the failures, because failure is where you learn the most.
It's a biological requirement.
Yes. Yeah.
Failure is a biological requirement for myelination to even occur, for competence to even occur. It's a biological requirement.
Yep.
I'm sick of it. It makes me want to puke. I'm so tired of it. I've challenged some of these people. Hey, come out and train with us.
Yeah.
Come on out and touch it. Now let's take that a step farther. Here's what I like to do. I like to go Facebook Live. You guys showed that trailer of ours from IDS Apex Level 6, right? All of those clips are from live feeds. When our instructor courses, we go Facebook Live. For not all of my training, because I don't always get great reception on my phone. There's technical things sometimes, but I just go Facebook Live. And so I ask these people, I'm like, you do have a live button on your phone, right? You could just push live. And you can show us all the time that you're putting in, and you can show us the failure, you can show us the struggle, because I train some of the most highly skilled and talented fighters on planet Earth. And I see what percentage of the time they look ugly. They train ugly. I see what percentage of the time that they're tapping. I see what percentage of the time that they're failing. But I don't see you doing it, motherfucker. And you're a master of master instructors? Really?
Yeah. It's a real problem. Like when I had my gym and my fight team, whenever we ran like fight night, so to speak, in the gym, it's like our sparring night or our running heavy pads where I had the camera focused on the ring, I would put it up as live, because the fact is, one, it helps with transparency overall.
Totally.
Two, it's good marketing. I hate to say it, but it's good marketing. But the fact of the matter is,
there's nothing wrong with good marketing as long as it's honest.
And it was straight up honest, because you get to see me and my guys and gals just sucking at life, but the suffering is a shared experience, and we are all growing. Because really, the lesson, aside from the fighting alone, the lesson in all that is the family camaraderie and the building and the perseverance. Aside from the fighting, it was really about that, and like removing the mysticism about combat sports or martial arts. That was the goal.
It's personal development through positive resistance.
Yep.
It's you versus you.
Yep.
It's you versus you out there, and willing to fail. And listen, our industry is built on people who want to look good in practice.
Yeah, it is.
Well, you gotta show, in order for your students to grow, as far as my teaching stuff, you have to show that you're a regular person, just like they are. You can fail, you can fuck up, you're gonna stumble, you might forget a move or a hand or something. If you don't show that to them, then they're gonna, you have that God complex when you come and walk into the dojo or walk into your training session. Then they're gonna be like, well, I have to be the standard set. I have to be just like him. I have to move like him. And I fell into that shit when I first came into training years ago. Like I seen my instructor doing shit, and I was like, well, I'm not doing it like she's doing it. So I guess I'm fucking up, and I'm not doing it right.
Oh,
I was hard on myself, but I didn't realize, like when I did see the failures, I started picking up it as time went on. To say you're just like me, But the problem is now that, like you said, everybody has that Todd. Like everybody has that God complex. Like you can't fuck up. You have to be. This is a standard, and I gotta be like that. I can't make any mistakes, or I'm less of value than
We want to have I want to sell a more realistic expectation for what human performance is under extreme stress in life and death situations.
Yep.
It's not going to be beautiful. It's not going to be perfect. It's about FSL, right? It's about figure shit out in the moment and having the skills to be able to do that, and creating an environment, especially online, where people start to have a more realistic expectation is where it's at. Listen, there's plenty of business out there to go around.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? What would the industry be like if everyone start doing that? If they start rolling video live during their training, right? And so it's time for a change. It's time for a paradigm shift, and it's going to take a lot of courage, and it's going to take some pushback, because people are invested. They're invested mentally, they're invested emotionally, they're invested financially, and they have a need to believe in that these people are heroes.
Yep.
But they're not. They're they're not. In fact, they're probably less of a hero than you are,
Mhm.
right? Because they have the need to portray themselves as something that they're not.
Yep. So like when I had the gym, the thing that I was constantly running into is like presentation, professional presentation, because the fact is there was the financial risk of loss of business and community goodwill. So I had to make sure everything looked good. And I presented myself looking good and all of that. And that came off as manipulative because it straight up was. And the professional integrity was way out the window, depending upon what the subject matter is. And what I'm finding now, because I'm retired, shut the gym down, and just doing stuff like this, I am free to say what I want. I am free to do what I want, and I am free to present how I want, silly, messy, and otherwise. And it's incredibly powerful for me. And I'm hoping that is helpful for others. So
I had the same experience. I've been a contributor on a lot of high-profile social media platforms and
yeah,
channels. And almost on a daily basis, I would receive pressure from them to stop posting what I was posting. Because
Yep.
you're making people look bad. You're shining a light on things. We have other contributors and owners of this platform that don't want you to say or do those things because it exposes them. You see.
Wow. Sounds familiar, doesn't it, Kurt?
Yes.
So and also sponsors and products that I had partnerships with that I just walked away from because I'm like, now I'm free. I'm free to tell the truth and free to be who I am.
Yep.
To be the person that I am. You want me to be somebody else, and you want me to do something that is not me and that doesn't exist. To get along with what Brian was saying, in terms of mechanics too, we also need to remember that there are no two people that are the same. Human beings are not stamped out in a factory, right? So there are no two circumstances that are the same, and there are no two people that are the same. So while we can sell principles, those principles need to be adapted to that person, to what their unique attributes and what their unique self is, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not, we say that IDS is meant to fit you. You're not meant to fit IDS. We want you to be your own DNA. We don't want you to be our DNA. I've had people write me and say, you're the worst cult leader ever. Worst cult leader meaning because I'm anti-cult. We go challenge, go do you, be your own DNA. Don't be a Todd Fossey carbon copy. We want you to be you. We want you to be intellectually honest, semantically accurate, and morally objective and morally honest and scientifically literate. That's what we want. If you do those things, everybody wins. So ecological dynamics, the long way to ecological dynamics. So we were talking about this, and this is for everyone's consideration. The moment that we enter in a force multiplier into the equation, especially the lethal force multiplier, everybody's unique. I love Tom. He's awesome. He gets it big time. The entire ecosystem changes, right? So if you add something to an ecosystem, what happens? The whole ecosystem changes, right? You take something away, what happens? The whole ecosystem changes. So it's unique specifically to whatever force multiplier that we have in the mix that is truly woven and integrated into the skill set like a tapestry. So when we're training in a way that is ecologically dynamic, it has fidelity and it's dynamic, it's alive. It's also functional and relevant and principle-based. One of the things I really push a lot in the firearms training world that they really don't understand is they're really into what is most fundamental. We prioritize things based on what is most functional first. What do you need to know first? What is most functional? Because what someone considers to be most fundamental is arbitrary. There's no way for them to prove what is most fundamental, but we can prove what is most functional to a degree, right? It's a soft science, and it's a soft science that's still evolving. It's a theory, means that we're on an ongoing basis, requires us to continue to practice continued exploration. The next piece is it should look like what students are actually going to be performing. The research strongly shows that the best performers perform as if and in a way that they would actually be performing. Now it's scalable. There's a whole lot that goes into that, but that's why I asked. That's what representative task design is. Are you performing and practicing the things that you would be doing in reality? Now, I'm all for tradition for if that's what your goal is. If your goal is simply to be tradition as a pursuit, you want to have a belt, you want to love the art, blah, 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 and you want to be traditional for that, then great. Practice within that tradition, but please don't call it self-defense. Please don't conflate it with self-defense because you're not practicing representative task design. It is not representative of how violence would actually occur, and that's probably not what you're going to be doing and what you're going to be performing in reality. Next, it's random and it's unrepeatable. We set the problem first, which I've already talked about. You're going against real resistance, a real resisting opponent in different degrees of resistance. The overwhelming percentage of the training that we practice at IDS takes place with an intensity, what we call an amplitude of 33 to 35% amplitude. Okay. The overwhelming majority of it with splashes of higher and lower intensity. That's another conversation. Then we want to make sure that our perceptions are dictating our motor movements and that our motor movements are also dictating our perceptions. And what that means is we're having a real human interaction. Violence is filled with nuance. So we have to be able to negotiate the nuance, right? Again, there are no two experiences that are ever going to be the same. It's not even possible. And this has been proven scientifically, by the way. It's also constraint-based and scalable. And then the most important part, in my view, is that we understand that the research strongly suggests that skill development and skill application are coupled and are happening at the same time. The outdated paradigm says develop skill first in a vacuum and then apply it later. But the research strongly shows that the application and the development should be happening simultaneously.
I mean, it's that whole adapt and apply thing, because if you're just repeat technique in line and then left to the devices to figure it out on your own in a sanitized situation, it doesn't work. So you have to like fight and figure it out. And that's so important. They've done
a lot of research on the most elite and the best performers. We'll just use a sport, for example. And I want to read what Tom said in a second. They've done a lot of research with the most elite performers of any say ecologically dynamic or with a sport that has an unrepeatable variability, an unpredictable variability. And they found that the most elite performers in the world play the most pickup games. The best players in the world get together and they play 3-on-3 soccer for fucking 1 million hours a week. The best basketball players get together and they just play the damn game. Right? The best, name it, volleyball players get together and they just play volleyball and play and play and play. Let's take a look at baseball, for example. Where do the best baseball players come from? The Dominican Republic, this tiny little poor island, right? And all they do from the day they're born is just play baseball.
Baseball, yeah.
Right? So in order for us to do this, it means that we need to play the game of violence, and we need to play the game of violence a lot. And we've developed at IDS over the last 13 years. We developed a methodology for that, a very structured methodology for that. But a lot of it is playing the game. There's a place for drilling. There's a place for being what's called reductionistic and breaking things down in details. There's a place for that for sure. But the overwhelming majority of the time, for us, it's a ratio of 85% ecological and 15% reductionistic. Would it be possible for me to read what Thomas's question was?
Good.
Let me bring it up. How far back was it? Is it this one?
Yeah, each person reacts to situations differently due to their core value, experience, arousal, and anxiety levels, regardless of if they train in the same physically. Exactly. That's psychology, and how people respond is a very big deal in terms of how it's going to influence their performance.
So do you think that a lot of the industry, and I've seen a lot of the videos, they do the cookie cutter scenarios that every self-defense situation is going to be the same? The woman walking to the car getting mugged, the woman walking underground garage, the guy getting gas. what do you think about the cookie cutter scenarios that you've seen being posted like on all the videos?
Well, do you remember what I said that, 80% of the population doesn't even have the ability to think critically. So all they do is just copy and imitate some other viral video. They thought, well, this is what this guy did, what was completely unoriginal. Like some sensational video that's going to get a bunch of views. There's a time and a place to go, full throttle like that with UTM, and we do a fair percentage of that too. But there's a lot of artificialities in that training that doesn't cross over as well as simply using an inert weapon like a SIRT. There's a lot of stuff I can't get. Head position is hot, it's fogged up, we can't see. People want to end the exercise sooner because of all of the, and then it's expensive. It requires a little time to use the person protection equipment. It's the artificialities in many ways. We like to use it here and there, splashes of it, but artificialities with that type of training also can be problematic. But the big names use it and they've got big views on it, so that must be the way that it's done. Because
that's what I said here.
In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. They don't know any better, so hey, they do it. So that must be the way. Right.
So since we're talking about that, give us how do we resolve that? Like, what do you think is your solution to resolve that? To get the disillusion out like that? I watched a guy do it. It's supposed to be like that. How do we get people out of their shell to think, to use the common sense?
That's been the bane of my. You probably can tell, Brian. Like that's been the bane of my existence, right? Like, I'll give you my opinion. One, if people aren't ready to hear it, they're not gonna. But like I'm a devout Christian, right? When Jesus himself and his disciples would come to a village or a city, if they knew that they weren't ready to hear what they had to say, they would go around. They wouldn't even bother. So there's that, right? After that, I think that it's really about people who can see it, who have the courage to put out real information, to educate and defend, right? And introduce a new paradigm in training that is going against the status quo, that doesn't think outside of the box. It eliminates the box. It doesn't think outside of the box. It eliminates the box. People get angry with me when I say, I'm not here to improve the existing paradigm. I'm here to replace it. And man, they get so mad. Who are you to replace it? I'm like, listen, at some time in history, right? They stopped using chariots during war, right? I don't know what the most modern tank is, but I promise you, I would rather have that modern tank versus all the chariots in the damn world. Chariots are fucking cool, don't get me wrong, but at some point the chariot became obsolete, right? They replaced it.
The failure to evolve is killing a lot of industries. The failure to evolve and go from the old ways and try to, I agree.
And so this is something else that makes people mad, and I want to hear what you have to say, Kurt, so please bear with me.
Yeah, go for it.
With respect. You guys can probably tell that my rhetoric online is pretty harsh, right? It's pretty.
The show. That's why you were invited.
It's pretty hard hitting, right? But the truth is, I'm a very loving and compassionate person. I'm a very loving, understanding, and compassionate person. And people say you're not helping the industry by doing that. But what you really need to do is softly plant seeds. I'm like, one, you can't plant seeds on a ground that's not fertile. Can't do it. Two, you can't just throw seeds on the surface of the ground. You have to break the ground first. You have to plow. I grew up on farms, right? We have to plow the ground first. And so I think that those who have the balls to do it need to come out hard hitting. And by being hard hitting, what are we doing? We're breaking the ground so that we can plant the seeds. There are different methods to get by. This is what I did for a living. As a therapist, that's what you have to do. You have to get around and through people's cognitive dissonance because they don't have the ability to see it themselves. So there are ways to plant the seeds, whether it be in, on a one-on-one basis or whether it be mass communication, right? So first of all, no one's going to pay attention if it's milquetoast. And I would rather have you hate me than not hear what I had to say. If you hate me, then you're going to remember what I had to say. And maybe someday down the road, that seed will germinate. You see? So that's my whole objective. I'm the battering ram. I'm the plow. I'm the plow who plows the ground. And then I'm planting seeds at the same time. I grew up on farms. That's what you do. You plow and seed at the same time. Mm-hmm. And then you have to water it. Right? And what's sad for me is when people send me messages privately and they say, I agree with you. You're right on. I feel so strongly about it. I just can't agree with you publicly. Right? And
it's so shit.
Do you see the problem? Because they're afraid of because the human beings, the number one fear that any human being has is to be ostracized by their community.
Yep.
Yeah, it's gone back to the caveman days. You're thrown out of the tribe. This guy's eating meat. You're over here eating a fucking cucumber. You were thrown out of the tribe because you're not a meat eater, right?
So it's in our DNA to want to be accepted by the tribe.
Mm-hmm. It is, because we're social creatures. Like, here's the other part about this is self-defense, personal protection training should follow the same lines of how combat development in warfare. It develops at the speed of war. Personal protection should develop at the speed of violence, because if we're utilizing skills that were utilized in the jungle from a century ago in a world that people use firearms, vehicles, and drones, we're going to be left behind. And that's a problem. So, but we get attached to lineages, history, and legacy because there's pride attached to it, whether it's cultural, personal, etc. But the fact is, the undeniable truth is that violence evolves because skills and tools evolve, because people evolve.
System justification bias, also known as status quo bias, is
a
tendency to defend and bolster the status quo, where existing social, economic, and political arrangements tend to be preferred and alternatives disparaged, sometimes even at the expense of individual and collective self-interest.
Yep. And this is the other part about you following along with your plow and seed analogy. Okay, the leader screams, follow me, not says push from behind. Okay, that means they're first in the fray. They're the ones leading the charge. To use all these analogies, those who lead from the front inspire the followers of those around them that they influence from behind, and saying, hey, they're doing the work. They're putting themselves out there at the behest and the risk of scrutiny and ridicule, but at least they're doing the work. Because you got people who complain about the status quo, and then you got people who actually try to work the problem. And we need more of that rather than the industry. The industry standard is also a problem, because who sets the industry standard?
They'll do it when it becomes safe for them to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So one of the things, if I could just indulge myself just a little bit.
Go for it.
One of the things, another reason why I take the approach that I take is I know that for our affiliate program, who we're going to attract. We don't want more. I don't want more for the sake of more. I want more of the right people. And the right people hear what we have to say, and we have the tone, and they see past. There's a lot of people that guy is so abrasive, I can't stand him. But the right people they see past the abrasiveness, right, as a filter, and they see the quality of the information and the quality of the content. So they're attracted to that. So we use that abrasiveness as a filter to attract the right people. And you'll find out, if you guys ever want to, as a guest, you can come and train with us with one of our instructor programs. Just let me know. You can come as my guest. I promise you. And you'll find out, oh my gosh, the quality of these people is fantastic. They're critical thinkers. They think outside of the box. They want a higher level of excellence. Right? They don't want to linger down here, in mediocrity, because they know how dangerous life and death encounters are. And so they want to be on that cutting edge, and they want to be moving a part of that cutting edge forward. So we also use this as a way of attracting the right people, not more people, but the right people. To use another Jesus analogy, we want to attract the people who have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. right? We don't want everyone. A lot of people would come to Jesus and they would say, Jesus, I want to follow you. I want to be a part of your entourage. He would say, cool, sell all your shit. Come and follow me. See, he didn't want to make it easy for them to follow him and to be a follower. He wanted to make it harder. So even only the most committed and serious people would do it, but also whatever their idols were, he wanted them to let go of. Your idol, he could tell your idol is money. So you got to let go of it. If your idol wasn't money, he wouldn't say that to you. Do you see? And also, by the way, Jesus took a whip to the money changers in the temple. Right? His disciples carried swords. They had a security detail during the Roman Empire when it was illegal to do so. Okay? So I'll just let that float out there for a minute.
Well, it's quality versus quantity. It's basically just
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at it in like, I look at it further like in the personal protection self-defense industry. Okay, so I hate empowerment seminars. I hate the 4-hour empowerment seminars because it sells you on sexy techniques and it's flashy and good for marketing, but they don't have, some of them, a lot of them that I've seen, don't have the brutal honesty of saying, hey, this is an introduction and should be a point of inspiration to put you forward to do hard work. Because to live this life, it's hard. And to do things that are valuable and quality and that will set you apart, it's work and it's hard. And people are inherently lazy.
Yes.
So they don't want to put the grind. They don't want to put time on the mat. They want the simple and easy. I mean, it's why I really hate the like quick fix hack, like simple self-defense technique niche that's online. It's like, well, we'll just put work in. Because that's hard, but people don't want to do the hard thing.
1,000%. And fighting for your life is hard.
Yes, it really is.
Right? It's hard. It's one of the hardest things ever. But just to add to that, like there's the other side to that coin. I agree with you, Kurt, 1,000%. And that's the biggest problem with the firearms training industry, right? We're going to give you a magic talon and we're going to fan the flames of the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? That's what we're going to do. But then there's also what the martial arts world tends to do, and that's extract as much time and energy and money out of people as possible by padding and stretching out their curriculums unnecessarily. You see? And so we take the opposite approach at IDS. Like we know statistically what they need to know first. Mm-hmm. And so you're not going to get this in year 5 after you've given me 50 grand and 5 days a week. We're going to start by giving you what you need today because we know that when you leave here today, you might actually have to use it.
Need it, yeah.
So it's based we use the statistics of violent crime to tell us, and we can prioritize our training based on probability, need, and then level of complexity. So it's backward in the firearms training world, right? Let me give you an example. It's all marksmanship. Right. And when human beings learn, they learn first a concept, then they'll retain a gross motor skill, then they'll retain a fine motor skill, and then they'll retain a sensory motor skill, right? Or tactile motor skill. The firearms training industry does it in the exact opposite. And then they'll say, well, they have to know the alphabet before they can write a sentence. And I'll say, well, let me ask you a question. When you first learned to communicate, did you learn to communicate by writing complete sentences with proper sentence structure? No. When you first learned to communicate as a human being, you just made human sounds. You cried, you grunted, you used your body language to kind of communicate what you wanted and what you needed to survive. When you learned to walk, did your parents set up cones and have you do walking drills? No, of course not. You started with what you needed first, and then later in life, through your process of refinement, you develop this arbitrary approach of communication known as the alphabet, and then you learn proper sentence structure, and then you learn how to write, a paragraph, and then you learn how to write a term paper, and then you learn how to write a dissertation. You see how it worked? But that's not how we learn in reality, and there are many really sophisticated learning approaches that don't take that learning for rote approach at all because they know it's not how human beings are designed to learn, like Montessori learning, for example. let's see what firearms training is direct and doesn't prolong learning. You spend tons of time doing same action and work on improving accuracy and time. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude at all, but I'm just not following the comment. So please don't think I'm being rude. I just didn't understand what he was talking about. But so it's like when people ask me, they say, well, you're very critical of the firearms and self-defense training industry. Like, can you give me an example? I'm like, it's everything. Like, it's everything. Like, is it any measure of health to be well adjusted to a society or a culture that's fundamentally sick? It's everything. It's the entire approach. The entire paradigm is dysfunctional.
I think more or less a big part of that is the priorities. Like the legitimate priorities are skewed between continuation of business and actually trying to help people. And people who are actually trying to help people aren't necessarily the most savvy when it comes to business, because it challenges the narrative, and their integrity is high at the behest of the dollar. And that is, in my mind, a big problem with the industry in general, is because they're too worried. I mean, businessmen need to be businessmen. There's that. But when we start sacrificing our skill sets that actually are necessary for our clientele, for the business,
Yes.
that's professionally negligent.
1,000%. But if I could just add to that,
Go for it.
I'd like to have a couple of examples that I'd like the audience to consider. And these aren't the only two, by the way. Eric Paulson and Greg Nelson have thriving businesses. Come to the academy sometime. You will see huge rooms packed with students, but they have it structured in a way where they can move the students in the direction, and when you guys are nodding your heads, right, in the direction of the group that's suitable for them. So anyone from the super casual martial artist who just wants to do Muay Thai, right, or BJJ or FMA or whatever, or MMA. You've got the casual public classes, right? And then from there, you've got the amateur team, right? And then they get moved off into the amateur team, and they have certain times that they train together because that's what their needs are. They're not going to be challenged down here. Not that they can't learn down there. They'll still go to those classes, but they have special times and places that they can be challenged. And then you have your professional teams, your professional fighters, and then you have your elites and your world class. And so they have the best of both worlds. They're not compromising the quality of their product or their information, but they can have something for everybody. Now, IDS, we're a niche within a submarket. That's not us, right? But I do believe that the industry, if they could use these models, like, you don't have to be a fraud. You don't have to be a fraud, man. Like, come on. Everybody can win here.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is the problem with a lot of the martial arts industry. Is like, we can do it too. We can do it all. I mean, you want to learn guns, we'll learn guns. You want to learn knives, we'll learn knives. But the fact of the matter is, if it's not the scope of your reality and your experience, then why are you speaking to? So, like in my case, I have a lot of firearms training just by way of military and being with the infantry and all that. However, I don't teach it because it's not my lane. It's not my job, and I'm not to a level that I want to publicly teach it. Now, I have a small group that we had concern about, like pressure under draw or draw under pressure and that kind of situation. But commercially, there's so many other people that are vastly more qualified than I am, so yes. I stay out of that lane. But the problem we run into with the industry is everybody wants to be the guy or the gal, but
100%.
It's a problem. It's straight up a problem.
Well, it's about money. That's why. I mean, it's just common, it's common sense. You want to make money, you're going to be a fucking jack of all trades. Somebody will say, I have BJJ background. Well, I can do karate, then they combine all these fucking classes. I've seen it here in my town, but there's one guy who has everything. This guy's a fucking master of everything. He has BJJ, Taekwondo, Muay Thai, MMA, karate, Shotokan karate, Kung Fu. I was like, God damn, this guy's done all this shit. He's only 35 years old. Holy fuck.
Another way to look at a jack of all trades is somebody who's mediocre at many things.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. So.
Just because you got your fucking dick wet and a couple of things there doesn't mean you're a master of everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Look, Mom, I'm splashing in the water. I'm an Olympic swimmer. Right?
Yeah.
You're not.
That's social media only makes it worse. Like, I'm splashing, man. I'm splashing. Yeah, and so that gets into like the combatives that we teach. Like, first of all, you'll never see me do a BJJ video.
Yeah.
I'll bring someone else in, right? Like, that's not my lane.
Yep.
But when it comes to weapons-based combatives in a weapons-based environment, now that's my lane. That's my niche.
Yep.
Because the context is so different, the strategy is so different, the approach is so different. And you can put a gi on all you want, you can put a gun on and roll around, and you can say that you're doing weapons-based grappling. You're grappling for concealed carry, but I promise you haven't thought about the things that actually go into having real algorithms for that specific context and that specific approach. It's very different, and no one wants to think that. Like, some of my training partners have won 11 or 12 IBJJF World Championships in a row. And there's some videos out of me like rolling with them trying to get my gun and stuff, right? And early on, they were like, well, this can't be that hard. I mean, I'm a 3rd-degree black belt. I've won all these world titles. Like, oh, how can it be? And they'll put the gun on, and like 30 seconds into the roll, I have their gun. They're like, how do you keep getting my gun? I'm like, because the pathways that you've learned and the patterns and the reflexes that you developed is not consistent with this. And I'm not even dropping elbows on you, dude. You know what I'm saying? I'm not headbutting you in your face when you pull guard on me. You understand that?
Hey, it's
You
the whole
understand
intent.
you understand we're not on a dangerous surface.
Well, it's a sport mentality, right?
Yes. And so there's a Venn diagram there. We're not saying they aren't mutually exclusive. We can learn a lot from sport, and we can learn a lot from self-defense. There's a Venn diagram there, and they can be helpful. Like, when I roll and train MMA, like 4 out of 5 rounds are as if I have my weapon on. Even if I'm in a no-gi class, right? I'm still rolling as if it's on. And 1 out of 5 rounds, I'll roll just for fun, for sport. And when I do open mats, like I show up what I would wear every day, and I wear my cert. And they're trying to get my guns, and I'm training as if it's self-defense. And they're just nice enough to allow me to be in there with them. Like, I'm just a tourist in their world, and they're being gracious to me, right? And allowing me to learn from them. And an awful lot of innovation comes out with training people at a level of skill that's far beyond mine until they get into my lane. And then they say, now you're at a level of skill that's far beyond mine. See how the context changes the strategy. The ecosystem is different, you see? And
It's
I think that's important. Go ahead.
It's the intent versus the why. Because what is the intent of the training? Actually, third, what's the intent of the training? Who is doing it, and why are they doing it? And one cannot say that they're the other, because we run into this issue of like the martial arts, classical martial arts tries to say that they're this when clearly they are not, and just the same back and forth. It's just, you have to figure out what is the intent behind the training, who is doing it, and why are they doing it. But having 100%. That intellectual honesty as to saying, hey, I'm having an honest conversation with myself and my training partners as to, I'm training BJJ for sport, and I could use it for self-defense, but it's not primary self-defense, versus I'm doing weapons grappling for combat situations that I may be able to use it for sport, but my intention and why is 100%. More important. So, and 100%. That honesty is really important. I may have repeated myself, but yeah.
If I could just add some specifics, okay? Tom Edison says, yes, their mindset awareness and responses are tailored specifically to their comp. Yeah. So they miss the cues needed for the weapon retention and access. And also the laws governing the use of force. Decision-making is a big part of it. Remember, we're coupling our decision-making with our motor learning simultaneously. I see a lot of training out there in the ECQC world, if you know what I mean. And the whole thing is like, well, you're entangled with somebody so you can just shoot the guy. Are you kidding me? That's a simple assault. You can't just shoot the guy. You have to be able to have all the intermediate skills to retain and access your weapon when you're justified to.
Is that the same scenario that when someone breaks in my house and they're carrying my fucking TV, I'm just shoot him in the back and drag him back in? No, you don't do that.
Yeah, 100%. But the problem is now you have all these views and you have this status in the industry, and people are seeing that. And it's actually taught that way. It's actually taught, well, if you're entangled with somebody, it's assumed that you're reasonably in immediate fear of death or great bodily harm. And that's legally incorrect. I'm a certified force science analyst, you guys. I'm an expert witness in force science cases. Like, I know this shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're setting people up to go to prison. Okay, but let's go. Let's just take BJJ for example. I'd like to just point out some differences on the legal side of things contextually. Okay, the use of force continuum says what? You can use the same level of force that comes against you without going beyond that level of force, right? Once a threat has been stopped, you must stop. If a threat is evacuating, they're not going to be a harm to anybody else. You must allow them to leave, right? Makes sense. And there's simple assaults, right? There's aggravated assaults. So a simple assault, again, says you're just going to get beat up and banged up and scraped. And an aggravated assault means you could experience substantial bodily harm or great bodily harm or death. So dude takes a swing at you and you take him down. That's a simple assault. But now you broke his arm with an arm bar. You just used excessive force because, right, he has substantial bodily harm. He's going to have to go through he has to go through medical treatment in order to repair that arm if it ever fully repairs. Right? Someone comes up to you, right, and they're a threat of a simple assault, and they're in your face and they're pushing and shoving you, and they take a swing, and you take them down and you take their back and you choke them unconscious. You've obstructed their airway and the blood to their brain, and they're reasonably in immediate fear of loss of consciousness. You just use lethal force versus a simple assault. You're the one going to prison. Furthermore, you better hope that they don't have a force multiplier on them because both of your hands are occupied. And if they can get a force multiplier out of their belt line, they can fucking kill you. And guess what? They can articulate justification for doing it.
Because you threaten their life.
I can go on and on and on with examples like this. Okay. And also things, okay, you want to hit me with an arm triangle. That's cool. Guess what I got? Good luck. Right? And I know how to keep that thing free, man. I know how to move in a way to retain that weapon and access it. So if you feel like you want to use those, you need to understand how the vulnerabilities that you're exposing yourself to, both legally and kinetically. Do you see how the decision making is so dramatically different?
Mm-hmm.
So here's a question.
I could give you hundreds of those examples.
So here's a question that is constantly being debated in the FMA world, but I mean, it's just weapons in general. So this issue about the potentiality of incrimination based upon your skill. So it's the whole like registering your hands because you're a professional fighter urban myth. But the fact is you got a lot of people in the industry, to include myself, that do Carenza knife stabby stuff online and has a archive of this particular training. Now, the question arises is if you get caught in a criminal action utilizing violence, that the defense or the prosecution is going to go after you in your body of content saying, hey, you use excessive amount of force because there's this data to prove that you are way skilled and that you are in the wrong for it. So what are your thoughts on that?
And also, not only does the jury not know any better, neither does the judge. And neither does the prosecutor. Prosecutors are not educated on the use of force. They don't have a clue. They're just going based off these social notions that we have, these social mores that the media has trained us to have. They don't have a clue. That's why you have expert witnesses who come in to explain how use of force actually works. No matter what, they're going to use right. And that's another reason why I want to have a more realistic expectation of human performance during violent encounters so that we can educate the public on this, right? There's no way that police officers can perform perfectly under those circumstances. Oftentimes they're faced with no-win circumstances. They have to choose the least bad option in moments of a second, fractions of a second, right? So there's that part of it. If you're putting that content out there, I would anticipate that they would use everything that they can against you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And again, it's another reason why I believe that we want to put out content that shows that we're doing everything in our power to possess the skills for everything intermediate so that you can have an equal argument that says, well, if your lawyer can say, if my client had to go to a level of lethal force, then it shows that it must have been immediate and lethal because they had all these other skills in between and those skills weren't going to be effective in stopping the threat.
And this is that part of, again, legal citizens, law-abiding citizens follow the law. And it's more of the reason for the law-abiding citizen, despite their training, their background, and their expertise, to continue to follow the law. And when the law is working against them, that they have such a body of work to prove that they are still law-abiding citizens, because it runs into the situation of the whole paradox about the Second Amendment in the majority of our country is like criminals don't follow the law, period.
No.
And when you have restricted gun laws that disallows the law-abiding citizenry to the right to carry and use, you're hamstringing them. And it's that issue about doing the right thing, doing the moral thing, walking the right path is the hard path, and the system works against you in that regard, and it's a real problem overall.
And not only that, it's been weaponized where people are obviously justified to use any level of force. Like I draw a distinction personally at IDS. We draw a distinction between force and violence. For us, violence has a victim, right? And force does not. So we teach people to use force as a countermeasure to violence. You see, that's the whole point. But it's also why we feel so strongly that we need to have all of these disciplines integrated together. And all of the intermediate skills, because if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? Especially if that's what you train the most and you default to that under stress, right? It's called a slips and capture error under stress, right? And so this is why we prioritize things the way that we do with our training, so that we have we're training the full spectrum in a non-linear way, by the way. It's non-linear, it's a full spectrum, so that we're only using lethal force if we're justified to, because we've worked that decision making so often over and over and over again. You guys should hear how many times in any of my instructor courses or my courses here, I ask the question out loud: do you feel as though you're justified to use that level of force? Really great technique, super functional movement, but were you justified to go to that level of force? Was there a better option? And like, oh shit, I used excessive force there. Or they underreact. They wait too long. They let people get too close, and they don't. Right. That's actually the biggest hurdle to overcome, is getting people to overcome the resistance that they have to actually harm another person, even if it means their own life being lost. So we have to overcome that at the same time too. So they're constantly learning to identify what's the appropriate level of force within the eyes of the law, and respond with a level of skill and measure. You see, it has to be proportionate with the response. That's the point.
So it's only reasonable amount of force to neutralize the threat, not excessive. So like I see what you're saying. You pull out a knife, you stabbing the guy 30, 40 times versus, maybe cut to his leg to disable him and then get away and flee out of the situation versus sitting there and taking him out with the left of him. You know what I mean?
I got to say this though, Brian, if you can bear with me, you can please bear with me here, please.
Yeah.
You used a lethal weapon.
Yeah.
Even presenting it, right? It's like with firearms, like when can you use a firearm as a deterrent? Well, generally speaking, right, because every jurisdiction is slightly different. The moment you bring that firearm out, you've already used lethal force. Where is it pointed? Were you justified? Were you reasonably in immediate fear of death or great bodily harm when you presented your weapon, even if you didn't discharge it? So the moment that blade even comes out at all, you've already used lethal force. Understand that. And so it's one of the things. Okay, can I say something? I'm going to say something here that's probably going to make a lot of your audience really mad.
Go for it. Do it.
And it might make you guys mad too.
Our mission is candid conversations about life, violence, and martial arts.
Okay.
So fire away.
Man, because the haters, man, when I say this. Okay, so I want to ask the edged weapons world a question. We'll just use the United States for now, but in general everywhere, okay? Do you feel as though the edged weapon is your best option for a force multiplier?
No.
Most in your world would adamantly disagree.
In fact, I will add to that. I don't even carry a knife. I'm going to admit it right here now on the show. I carry other things besides that. Just put up
The advantage of having a firearm is that you can use it in extreme close quarters and you can use it at distance. So you have a lethal option at distance. Okay. So now let me bring up some other points. I feel like I have a little bit of support here. So just to help with this from the point of view of force science. I've already articulated what the most common types of aggravated assaults are. So in order for you to be justified to use your blade in any way, you have to reasonably and immediately presented with an aggravated assault where you're in immediate fear of death or great or substantial bodily harm, right? The most common are going to be ambushes with a blade. So now this person has ambushed you with a blade. They have 5 to 7 thrusts every 5 seconds. And now your answer is to get your blade out and to get into a knife fight with them when they've ambushed you and they're controlling you with their lead arm. That's your best option. Or somebody has an impact weapon like a hammer or a baseball bat or a pipe. And your best option in that case is to bring out your blade. After that, it's going to be what? Multiple attackers. Okay, multiple attackers. That's cool. So you're faced with multiple attackers and you bring out your blade, right? Oh, cool. You just gave them justification to bring all their blades out too. Or whatever other force multipliers that they felt. So now you're going to fight everybody with your blade? Really? Okay. Oh, this person has a firearm and you're going to present your blade. Really? Because I promise you, I don't care how well skilled you are, I can give you a little bit of training when you're integrated with your hands and your firearm, and you're going to get shot in the face. Do you have any idea what that's going to do to you? I don't think you do. I think that you're stuck in a cognitive illusion, and you're doing a lot of mental gymnastics if you believe that's even close to being your best option. How about a tactical flashlight? How about that? That sounds like a pretty good option. That sounds like it'd be a pretty good option, right? Or better yet, okay. But I can be far more versatile with these. And if I'm at distance and I pull out that tactical flashlight, I can do an awful lot from there. I'm not talking about in extreme close quarters, right? I don't buy the whole thing that you're gonna have a tactical flashlight in your hand and you're gonna redirect and you fuck off with that. It's not gonna happen.
You're gonna need distraction, right? With a light to distract from strobing.
There's an awful lot that you can do if you're at distance with a tactical flashlight, and if you have a weapon mounted light on your handgun, all the better, because now you have that additional force multiplier working well for you, even in a well illuminated environment.
Yep. So like here's a principle that I have adopted and I teach when it comes to edged weapons. It is very simple. If I can touch you, I can cut you and I can kill you. However, you can do the same to me because we're in that tactile range of hands-on and hands-on. Because I mean, truly the fight is in grapple range. Combat starts at a distance, but we can shoot, maneuver, and communicate and lay down force and action that way. But the actual fight, when we look historically and just the way we look at humans in general, the actual human struggle is when we go hands-on. And that requires us to be in range of that absolute risk of all things. Because
almost all violent encounters involve some type of scramble in the clinch.
Yep.
Almost all of them do. Now, somebody said how fast that we can draw, right? That's a whole nother conversation. I won't go down that rabbit hole right now. But that's assuming that the blade is presented at distance, and it's usually not. But even if I can create distance, if you want to close distance with your blade, if you're closing distance and my hits are not stopping you, which they may not, I can still blast you with that front kick.
Absolutely. And you can still get offline, change the trajectory.
I can still scoop and blade, or I can still scoop and parry. Right? And boom, there's a tremendous amount that I can do to truly integrate my combatives while my handgun is in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
I can contact shoot you.
Mm-hmm.
I can blast my muzzle into your face while I pull the trigger.
Yep.
Like, I think we have to get real about how this works.
Yep. And the thing that I run into, and this is, and I don't understand with the martial arts world, and specifically like the FMA world, because I have a really strong background in FMA, and there's a cultural connection. But the things I don't understand, because I come from combat sports and the military, is you get so many people that have dogma and rhetoric about how knives are used in warfare, when the fact is that's really not the case. How they're used in warfare, it's a last ditch effort where they've ran out of ammunition, where they misunderstand how warfare is fought. Like, I get in trouble in this idea about, if I'm using FMA in warfare, I'm wrong, because that means I'm fighting alone. I'm not utilizing my fire team. I'm not utilizing all combined forces, all the other pre-steps to make sure that I have a high opportunity to succeed, because fighting is not fair, because fighting fair is a fallacy, because the intent to win the fight is I'm going to fight unfair towards my enemy. So if I'm using something that's going to give me the highest opportunity, or a very high opportunity to fail, then why use it? So again, going back to, if I'm using FMA in warfare, I already failed, because the fact is I'm using the wrong tool at the wrong range in the wrong context. And the FMA community, certain sectors of it, some of the more dogma and rhetoric driven side of the community, gets so fixated on like the historical cultural connection to it, but not actually seeing how fighting is actually done, or how violence has actually occurred in the modern context of, yeah, you may have the knife out, but the fact is that firearm at distance behind cover in an elevated position, you're just not going to win. So
I will say this, though. It is in my opinion, and I believe that the force science would support this, that the aggressor with the edged weapon has the advantage. If they keep their intent concealed. In close, more people will survive gunshot wounds than they will edge weapon wounds. It's been a very significant percentage, actually. The firearm has far more advantages, however, in many ways. But yeah, it's all going to come down to the context. The context is going to dictate the strategy. But as long as we're honest with ourselves and we're honest with the public about what the limitations are for any force multiplier, and what our own personal limitations are, and what we do, and if we're doing it in a way where our intent is truly to preserve life and actually to prevent violent crime from even happening to begin with, right? Or like a lot of what we teach at IDS, we teach people how to not use their firearm, right? But if you have an IDS student who you decide that you want to impose violence upon, it's probably not going to go very well for you.
Well, I mean, Brian, you have anything else to jump in with this? I mean, we're closing on to 2 hours. I don't know how far we want to go down this rabbit hole. I have discovered at like, a part 2 would be awesome. I do know like once we hit 2 hours, the signal degradation occurs, and like we end up with robot voices. So that's pretty funny. Yeah. So, Todd, I really appreciate you coming on here. I really do, personally, because the fact is, I'm challenging the rhetoric is how we grow. It just straight up is. And because I'm a big nerd, I'm a big proponent of a lot of the philosophies from Frank Herbert's Dune. And the simple one of stagnation leads to obliteration and absolute death. Because we have to challenge the rhetoric and the dogma to grow. Because if war evolves at the speed of war, so does self-defense and personal protection.
Amen.
And why would we be stuck in a lane because of cultural identity, history, lineage, and attachment, just for the sake of that, and say that that is the only way, when the fact is it grows and evolves? Because we run the issue a lot of this historical content becoming obscure and forgotten and mystical, and it's deficit for the instructors and the students that want to believe so heartedly into that dogma and rhetoric when they're actually faced with the reality of it, and then their whole world comes shattering down around them because they spend all this time learning these styles and skills. But I mean,
they get indoctrinated.
Yeah.
And I would, just to add to what you're saying, and I love that. I really love that. Yeah. We need to challenge our own thesis too.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to constantly be challenging our own theories and make sure that we're not getting caught in that trap of, becoming the monsters that we fight. You know what I mean? That we don't get into our own trap of drinking our own Kool-Aid. And so I'd like to encourage everyone to challenge your own thesis, see where you're wrong, and then, admit it. Admit where you're wrong and learn from it. Go ahead, Brian.
I'll add on to that. A lot of stuff was said today that a lot of people, like you said, they'll watch this on YouTube and they're like, well, that's his fucking opinion. They're going to get their fucking, nuts twisted or whatever. But a lot of good things were said here because, like you said, people are when you've invested so much time into something, you believe it's gospel. Years in a system, years of training a certain thing, and you're not open to other ideas or open to other ways of thinking, you just get set in that, like you said, that endless cycle of, nope, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I was instructed this way. I'm not going to listen to anything what he's saying. And I'm glad he came on here today and he really opened up a lot of eyes, and people are going to watch this later on to see that there's other ways of thinking. There's realistic ways of how to think and realistic ways of how to do different types of things. So there's a definite value in this whole, like you guys are talking about as far as the interview, opening eyes, and that's what it's about. And I'm glad you were raw and unfiltered. Like I said, we don't ever filter people on here. We don't ever edit and say anything. So I'm glad you got the, at least halfway. We know that we still got a lot more in the tank, but we drained half your tank. But we're definitely going to do a part 2 sometime in the near future here, and we're going to get you on and talk about go into a little bit more of how the IDS methodology, your opinions, some other stuff. I'm glad you might have got that out there where you're talking about the pressure testing and stuff like that. People are gonna really look at that and everything. But it was great. It was fantastic, and I'm glad I got to invite you on here and have. I know you were on FMA discussion before, but it was like that wasn't really pertaining to anything that was related to what you were talking about here today.
I was actually on with Tom Pena.
Yeah.
He was hosted that episode. Well, listen, I know this. Whoever's listening, this might sound like a love fest right now, but seriously, like the honor is really all mine, you guys. You guys gave me the opportunity to come onto your show and on your platform to speak in a way that was unfiltered and to support the unfiltered ideas that I was sharing, and that means the world to me.
Yeah, no problem.
I can share my ideas and share some science, right, and the things that I'm passionate about. In the betterment of all of us. I want the public to know that are listening to this, that is my goal, that is my objective. But there's never been a great movement in the history of the world that wasn't polarizing. Whenever you challenge the status quo, it's going to be polarizing, and so be it. That's the way that it's going to be. And I would rather have you, hate me for who I am than love me for who I'm not.
No, I don't think anybody hates you on here. I think everybody's big.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Those that matter don't mind. Those that mind don't matter. But I hope that maybe down the road people will see that this conversation that we're all having is because we care, not because we don't.
And we wanted to get the message out there. And we know, like, I've seen a lot of your Facebook Lives. I've seen you talking. And that's why I was like, I need to have him on the show, give him a platform, give him a say, let him talk unfiltered, uncensored, just what he thinks on his. Remember, I told you before, we were talking privately, like, speak your mind. But the honor is definitely ours. I mean, I'm a fucking peon. I'm not going to say anything about Coach Kerr because he's more well-known than I am with his coaching experience and everything. But as far as me, I'm just a nobody guy who likes it in the hobby, industry. You can call me. I'm not like I don't teach for a living. I do it as a hobby, to teach on the side. My personal training is for myself. I don't put videos out because it's my personal thing for my learning. But the honor was definitely ours to have you on there. And I definitely want to be interested in the future of taking one of your courses in person. And so in the future, I'd definitely be open to going out there and experiences it, instead of just looking on behind the camera, actually going and experiencing it in person. So thank you.
It's an open invite. Keep an eye on our training schedule. Feel free to come out and join us. We have a level 2.5 coming up in Castle Rock, Colorado, the 7th through the 10th of September. It's beautiful there, and we'll have several of our affiliates there. If you guys have it in the time and in the schedule, you're welcome to come join us there. coming up. I think you get a lot out of it. It's weapon defense for concealed carry. It's
Nice.
versus the edge weapons and blunt force weapons, and it also includes disarms, standing in on the ground. So, but thank you guys so much, and thank you for everybody listening, and thank you for all the great comments and questions that came in. I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. We're definitely grateful to have you on. Now we're gonna have Coach Greg Nelson on.
Yeah.
Work on that one.
I'll just hit me up on Messenger, and I'll make an introduction. I'll set you guys up.
Sweet.
He's like, who the hell are these guys?
He doesn't
care. You said it earlier. Like, you do this because of care. Okay. Yeah. The reasons why we do this is based on love. Okay. Not just the podcast, but like the training. Okay. We love those whom we love, and we are willing to sacrifice, put forth the effort, fail, because we want to protect them, and we're willing to sacrifice our means and methodologies to do the things that is necessary to protect those whom we love. So the reasons why we fight is based in love. Sounds silly, but it's the reality. I don't want
you have to immerse yourself in violence, and you have to understand your enemy, right?
Yep.
You have to immerse yourself in violence to understand it. And it's an uncomfortable thing to do for everybody. But I believe, like you said, I'm glad you used the word love, because I think the right people really do it out of love.
Exactly. I mean, leadership is love because it's sacrifice.
Amen.
So, and all of this, like the big thing we're hearing all today, and like the average person doing this sounds like a lot of work, because it is. And that's what makes it beautiful.
Be great. That's what makes it work in, right? Mediocrity is never acceptable.
No,
in my book anyway.
No, not at all.
So sweet. I'll do our outro here. We're gonna drop you down, and we're gonna do our a last bits of showing where we're at, what's going on here in the future. Do you have anything coming up in the schedule that you'd like to promote? I can throw your Facebook links and all that up here real quick.
Yeah, thanks. Well, all of the courses I'm doing right now are instructor certification courses. So if anybody's interested in that, you can message me on Facebook, Todd Fossey on Facebook, or you can send me an email, todd@gunclasses.net. I would be honored if you guys checked out our YouTube channel, Integrative Defense Strategies on YouTube. We're constantly putting out educational content and videos there. Our Facebook page, also Integrative Defense Strategies, Instagram, Integrative Defense Strategies, or you can follow me personally. I'm putting out the same content most of the time. Todd Fossey. If you're interested in what we're doing, we have a home training program, online home training program. It's called IDSCitizenDefender.com. And it's very intense. It's very comprehensive. We have 16 full courses on there. They're several hours long. It's very advanced. But we use LearnDash on there, so it's interactive. It's really cool stuff. And also, if you're interested in becoming an affiliate, we have two websites. One is called thisidids.com. That's for our instructors, and IDSCitizenDefender.com are for students who want to practice at home. So I'd be honored if you guys checked me out there. And thanks for the opportunity to plug it.
Sweet.
No problem.
Glad to have you on here. I'm going to drop you down so Brian and I can do our outro and all that. But yeah, just hang out in the lobby, and we'll bring you back here in a sec.
Thanks.
Yep. Wow. Brian, what do you think?
Great show. Glad I reached out to him. I know Guro Tom did the interview with him, but I kind of want to get more into the gun stuff on our show. So came out great.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, we got some great information out there. We challenged the narrative, which is always important.
We do on this shit. That's what we do. Yeah. Over here.
Yep. So what do we have up here on the schedule? I know on my other side, I got Guro Tuber on Belton, Croach Belton coming up here on next Thursday. And we're going to get him on, I think, after I come back from Water and Steel on this show. Let's see what else we got going on. Next Friday, we're helping promoting the Art of the Draw fundraiser with the PTTA or PTK Federation. See what else we got going on here. And yeah, we got Datu Kelly's Water and Steel down there in Washington. I'm going to be down there. So if you want to come see me rubber chickens and everything and come watch me suffer, here we are. So what else we got? Is that, I think that's what we got so far in the lineup.
Well, we haven't done the flyers yet, but September we're going to have a couple of CLOT practitioners on called CLOT September. We're going to I don't want to butcher his name. Demain Gamad from the Borneo style CLOTs. We're going to have Professor Jack Othman. I'm still working on a date for him.
Yep.
And I don't know if you had some people in mind that you're going to have on there. We're still working on Guro, Ron, and Benny. So we're going to date for them. So look out for that. I know you have some people you're going to have on, a couple UFC people, right?
I have one that I'm working on. She's just got married and is on her vacation, on her honeymoon. I also going to have an Army veteran on for our post thoughts about September 11th. So there's that. So yeah, I think.
Do you want to just go ahead and promote your show? Go ahead and put that. Go ahead and put that. If you guys haven't followed or watched two FMA nerds.
Turds.
What the fuck? They can sit that on my mind.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome.
Fucking laughing over there. It's like loose MMA nerds talking stuff.
I mean, kind of.
MMA nerds talking. You know why? Because I always call my fucking dog a turd all the time. He's over here fucking trying to hump my leg. So it's my fucking.
Oh,
get out of here.
Well, yeah.
But definitely watch the show. On a serious note, it's good stuff. I mean, with a new generation of FMA practitioners are coming out, and just like raw, uncensored, and candid. Same thing as here, right? Same stuff, same raw, uncensored, candid talk about FMA stuff.
Yep.
So watch it. Watch the show. I'm promoting. I'm no way affiliated with the show. Like I'm not on the show. I'm not hosting it. Or this is Kurt's his thing. So I'm not putting my dick in it or anything. This is completely his show. So I'm just promoting it on here, and he's going to be some time. He's going to promote his show on here. So the future is looking good for Fight House Talks podcast. Great episodes in, but damn, they've all been damn good episodes all up till like number 8 so far. So I mean, we've gotten some good feedback, and you guys are enjoying. I've seen the get messages. People are enjoying the raw candidness of, and people are wanting to come on because of that. And I've had a lot of messages. People, if you're watching the show later on and you do want to come on, and I haven't got back to you on messages, I apologize. I've been real busy. You can also message Coach Kurt. You also message him too. I will get back to you. There's a couple of messages I haven't returned. My bad. Been kind of, but I will message you back when I get a chance, and we'll talk.
Will do. Well, it's been a great time. I'm going to drop us out and our outro. And yeah, everybody, thank you for hanging out with us.
Thumbs up.